Well, everyone, here we are. I'm a little, verklempt because I just got done with a big celebrity interview, but now I'm going to a double celebrity interview because these gentlemen are celebrities in the wellness real estate movement. I'm joined by Chuck Heath and by Steve Nygren. And why we invited them to be on together is this is what's so cool. While both have been developers a long time or in the business a long time, Chuck, how long have you been?
40 years.
40 years. And how many communities have you worked on?
50 or 60 last time I counted.
But all wellness communities?
No, a little bit of everything.
Yeah, a little bit of everything. And Steve, how many years have you been in hospitality design?
Oh, hospitality and design, 55 years.
55. See? So why I wanted to have them both on is because it hit me in doing the research that Steve Nygren, I've seen him at so many global wellness summits. Everyone knows he created Serenbe. But until I dug in, I did not know that you are like the godfather of the wellness real estate community. Because what did you say in one of your interviews? Serenbe, let me explain, is an award-winning biophilic community that connects people to nature and to each other. You have hamlets with commercial centers. You have art, agriculture, joy-filled life, education for awareness, fresh food, organic farm. What else don't you have? I mean, you have walk paths lit by, I don't know, street lamps. You have horses, fences. I don't even know. A little inn. I can't even stand it. And when did you do that?
Now, isn't it amazing that sounds unique, and yet it's exactly like we lived in communities 100 years ago?
Isn't it true?
And that's been what I've studied. And I think that's the sad part of where we've come over the last 70, 80 decades is places like Serenbe are unusual rather than the norm.
Yeah.
We broke ground 20 years ago.
20 years ago. And one thing I always think of when I think of Serenbe is front porches.
Absolutely.
What role do they play?
Well, for instance, we didn't miss a beat during the pandemic because everyone was on their front porches, which are 5 to 10 feet from the front walk and safe distance for everyone to walk by, have conversations. And so we were, really humming during the pandemic because everybody was there, but they didn't want to be, and we have all the fresh air and outside. So we were out on the streets and in the common areas and on the front porches. And
so I'll let all our listeners know that we're going to talk with Steve about his origin story about creating this wellness community 2 decades ago, before the Global Wellness Summit existed, and before there was a wellness economy defined, and before we realized that wellness real estate was exploding long before. But we're also going to talk to Chuck Heath because after all these years of development, he's finally settled on designing a wellness community near Deer Valley, right there. And we're going to find out why and his origin story. But let's start with Steve, because did I hear you say that when you started Serenbe, no one had even created the LEED certification yet?
LEED certification was just being developed, and our Blue-Eyed Daisy is one of the first 100 buildings certified. And I believe still remains the smallest silver LEED certification.
What kind of building is the Blue-Eyed Daisy?
It is a coffee shop and restaurant.
Really?
Being a hospitality person, if you were going to create a great place, you had to have a place to gather, and not a club or not like some people were doing back then, but a commercial place that people could come. And of course, this is in the middle of the forest, on what was then the wrong side of town. And so my friend said, God, Steve, have you lost it? If you're going to do a restaurant, at least put it on the main road. How's anyone going to find you in the middle of the forest? Because there was nothing there. And everybody thought I was crazy, but I was determined. So we built our townhouse and the restaurant across the street. My sister-in-law said she'd build a cottage, and a friend said he'd build an estate house. So I thought, okay, we'll have four buildings and a street that'll accommodate 40 houses and live works of various things, and people will finally get it. But I found out that the market, the analysts, the real estate community did not know what the market wanted, because I sold my first 20 lots that I released in 48 hours.
What?
And I raised the prices 20%, and then the next 20 were taken. And so we built the whole 40 at the same time.
20 years ago?
20 years ago.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so people can picture it. It's just trees on trees and wooden fences and horses and things like you have outdoor performances, year-round cultural events, regional theater, film series, culinary workshops, visiting artists, classes, dinners, talks. I mean, it really sounds like a small town USA.
It is a small town USA
But
with free range kids and uncaged elders. Unusual today, unfortunately.
Yes,
yeah,
yes, it is.
I
And
am.
people notice them.
Yeah.
It's so unusual that people notice it.
Wow, that's crazy. So tell me, what made you think? Well, Atlanta, you don't think of as a wellness community, right? What your background was in hospitality. You, I think you were maybe a dishwasher, a waiter in
Well, you
restaurants.
did read the long history.
Yeah, and you evolved to what point
That's right.
then?
I'm a generational farm kid from Colorado, and I was determined to get off the farm with dreams of being an architect.
Mm.
And in my first summer break, I wasn't going back to the farm, and some friends got a job for me up in the mountains, and it was at a fine resort. But he said, "The only job is a dishwasher. Everybody's returning." I said, "I don't care. I just don't have to go back to the farm."
Yeah, yeah.
And the third night, the owner came back and he said, "Did any of you kids bring a dark suit? Somehow, Mom taught me to always pack." I was the only person that had a dark suit, and he said, "Go put it on. You're the maitre d." And so, of course, this was great. All the waitresses who were 21, got me a fake driver's license, and they took me out drinking every night because I was responsible for all the
Oh, you
seatings. And
know,
I decided, man,
good life.
who wants to go to architecture school? I'm going to go to the hospitality business.
Smart, smart. So you went from being that maitre d with the dark suit to, I don't know, starting a restaurant chain called the Pleasant Peasant.
That's right. I ended up where I took then when I got back to school and needed some money that Christmas. I thought I could get a fine job because I was a maitre d, and of course, humbly, I accepted a job as a busboy with Stouffer's Food Corporation, and ended up with them in their corporate um, uh, program and opening hotels. And they were moving me to cities to open hotels, and they moved me to Atlanta.
Oh,
And this was, Atlanta was hot, and we opened that hotel in '72. And 3 months later, I left because I was going to be moved out, and I left and opened my own restaurant. Uh,
and that's one thing, but to grow to 34 in 8 states until 1994. Were you going to retire when you got rid of the restaurant chain, or what were you going to do?
I had sold a portion of the restaurant chain and a group of New York investors for our expansion and job security, a whole story there. And then they bought Morton's of Chicago and Bertolini's, and we went public. And so I was running 2 arms of a public company, and I wasn't having fun anymore.
Yeah.
And so my contract was coming up, and I really started reanalyzing our life. We had a farm that we went to every weekend. It was about kind of like a whim, but we found that that's where my kids were 3, 5, and 7 when we bought it. That's where they wanted to go every weekend. And being in that fresh nature where they had no toys and no material things, we had a quality of life
Oh.
versus our big house in the city with all the trappings. And I was on all the boards, and we weren't changing diseases. The arts organizations were growing broke. The politicians I was supporting weren't getting elected. And one Monday morning on the way back in from a fabulous weekend in the country, I just said, "Why?" And I cashed out and retreated to the country. And then 7 years later, became concerned that urban sprawl and the tentacles of everything that I had run from were actually going to find us. And, I still like a major city, ethnic food and foreign
Well, you
films.
get to
And
them
so I
too.
didn't want to move further out. And so that's why we started what we did to change, to empower an entire community of 500 people to envision their future.
Well, what role? I just see you on so many boards, so many events, like Earth Day. You spoke at something. I mean, I really do think you are considered the pioneer in this wellness real estate group. How has getting involved in boards and outside communities? What has been effective about that for you
Then, now, at what point in our life?
all along? Because you've made time for it.
Well, I think it's important to connect with people, and I think I have become richer through the personal relationships and what I've learned for whatever industry or whatever I was doing. And certainly, that's certainly true of Global Wellness Summit and the people there, but also what you learn from the information that comes in, and you see how that's evolved. I mean, 10 years ago, when I talked about Serenbe as a wellness community in Marrakesh. I was the only
You
developer there from
were?
any country.
Yeah.
And now there's a whole day
2014.
dedicated to it with people
2014.
coming. So in just 10 years, so this is why I have great hope. It's really changed. And you're, JP Morgan Chase in the financial industry sort of thought this was a bunch of kooks doing anything wellness, 10 years ago. And look at how that's changed. So I have great hope.
So, give me 3 lessons that you learned, Steve, in your journey early on, blazing the trail, that you would like people in that room to take away tomorrow. Because there's a lot of hopefuls. I heard a thing where, a lot of companies now, developers, architects, I don't know, are saying, well, wellness, okay, give me 3, Hail Marys that we have to do just to make it wellness. Like they don't know about wellness themselves.
Well, number one, don't listen to people that say you have to have a feasibility study, because if you're doing something new, you can't do that. And, all feasibility studies are looking in the rearview mirror, and this is why we're going in circles. Uh, Number two is just because it's a man-made law doesn't mean you should follow it.
I
My
like
kind
that.
of guy.
I like that.
So challenge that. If you know
Yep.
what it is, don't do it just because it's, challenge it. And I've done that on every level, local, state, and federal. And
You don't forget the local, though. I mean, some of the boards you're involved in, they're very local.
oh,
They're
you
very,
have to be involved in all levels because it all interferes. No, I think a lot of things are going to happen on a local basis. It was interesting. Just 2 weeks ago, when I was in D.C. during the World Bank, and I was invited to a circular economy lunch, and I walked in, and there were 30 people at this really high power looking lunch, and I'm thinking, I literally double checked to make sure I was at the right lunch. And as they got going, and they referred to Serenbe, they said things are going to change. We're going to change global situations on a local
Local.
level. And I think that's what's starting to happen. We see too many, Washington and too many governments are not functioning. But your local people are starting to take charge and decide they're going to change things. Whether it's your HOA, your
Ugh,
school board,
please.
your city government, that's where change is starting to happen.
So get involved locally. I mean, you really are. I love looking at your LinkedIn, all the things you post, all the things you speak at. So, tell me what biophilia is and why are you a champion of it?
When, I mentioned when we started 20 years ago, everybody thought I was nuts, and they'd come out and thought I was growing marijuana in my forest. I must have been on
Maybe he
something.
is. Yeah.
Uh, and so we just put our head down and started doing it. And of course, the market responded, and then the recession hit. And about 2010, analysts started showing that walkable and environmental communities were the first out to start stepping out of the recession. So there suddenly was interest from financial parties. So let's face it, they are the ones that make things move.
Right.
And people were identifying us as a new urbanist community. Well, we are, but new urbanism isn't environmental or connecting to nature. Then the Urban Land Institute has a published book at the time of the 10 top environmental communities in the nation. We were the only one with density. And then we put farms right next to, and the New York Times did a story on us putting a farm right next to housing and called it an agrihood. Well, that has
Agrihood.
stuck. And so there was an agrihood. So everything people were identifying with described us, but didn't describe the whole. And so I started remembering the Rocky Mountain Institute did a charrette for us when we were first starting, and Bill Browning talked about biophilic design and communities, and then I was on a speaking thing with Bill Bentley of UVA talking about biophilic cities. I said, "Oh my God, that's who we are. We're none of those things, but we're all those things."
So biophilic then is design that embraces nature?
Well, it's really embraces all living systems, whether it's human, animal, or plant. And so a good way
Wow.
I think about it is if you have respect for each other and all living systems, including the planet, we're going to have individual and global health.
It's really something what you're trying to do there. Right now, let's describe to our listeners, there's a boutique hotel, there are homes to live in. What else is on your, how many acres is your property?
Well, we personally own 2,000, but we changed zoning on 40,000 so that the entire area would follow these characteristics. And we used the countryside of England as our model. Now, bringing English land law to a property rights southern state was a trick. And we used only universities because the planning groups, the lawyers all thought we were nuts. But universities
Dream.
look at hope.
Yeah.
And they have fresh minds. And so we were able to model everything. Luckily, it didn't cost me any money. And so we changed the zoning and the regulation that it was one of the largest land use changes in recent history in metropolitan Atlanta
That's pretty crazy.
with
So
500 landowners
you have 500 landowners at Serenbe
in that 40,000 acres.
in the 40,000.
So they all have the rights. to be a
Everyone
part of
has the responsibility and the rights.
it. Yep.
But we brought pro-development and pro-preservation in together, and through a 2-year conversation, everyone came to realize they could all have more of what they were interested in than if they fought each other.
So my one last question, then we'll get back to, what you've learned, is how did you find people that fit Serenbe? How did they find you? Specifically, really, how did they find you?
We have never marketed. People come to visit. For the first 10 years, not one person who bought came to buy. They came for dinner, they came for a birthday party, they came to ride horses. And there are no pictures that do it justice.
I know, I
Wait,
could feel that when I looked. I was like,
because
I
it's
know
all
I'm not-
designed with sacred geometry, and so you feel it. It's all geothermal, so there's no noise of compressors. There's no lawns.
I
so
never knew you were geothermal.
We're,
I'm gonna
we're
start
mandatory
crying.
geothermal.
Wow. That's,
We don't
never-
allow lawns, so you'd have mowers and blowers.
What do you have instead?
Natural landscaping. It's as though we placed a village and houses in a garden versus landscaping around a house.
And he told Jennifer, our wonderful Jennifer Walsh on Your Walks with Walsh, that in blueberry season, it's like everyone's picking blueberries that's in their yard, Fruit.
Blueberries on every crosswalk. Talk about what enlivens a community, and the kids all know what's going on. And 300 kids plus, more moving in all the time, not one reported sign of asthma. Statistically impossible in the United States today.
wow.
We don't allow chemicals. We're not chemicalizing where we live. We wonder why we have cancer, depression, asthma, and then we keep doing the same thing.
Oh my God, Steve, we could talk to you for days. Okay, so before we go any further, now let's talk to Chuck. Chuck, how many years in 50 to 60, like 1 to 2 developments a year? How long have you been at this?
Yeah, 40 years and at least 50 to 60 developments. And I've done a little bit of everything, but the big thing I did is I did a lot of research when I was in grad school on senior housing.
Oh,
So I actually have been in wellness real estate, just didn't know I was.
yeah, right?
So,
And so you have really turned a corner, though, because now you're not just building a community in a beautiful, quiet valley. There's one left near Salt Lake and Deer Valley, the Heber Valley. But you're going to make it a wellness community, and you're building around hot springs. How did this happen? AMEYALLI is the name of it.
AMEYALLI, yes, we kind of by chance. I actually literally had somebody come and ask me to look at a project, including a wellness spa type program, and I said, well, I don't really know a lot about that, but I do know a little bit about real estate. So I went and started looking at it. I started looking at sites and did find this one. They actually had proposed another site that just didn't make sense from a real estate standpoint. So I found this site and got into what they were trying to accomplish with this kind of wellness center. And as I got into it, I really got more interested in it. And my wife is real involved in health and wellness, and so we both kind of got interested in it. And I've always had, we mentioned I've been trying to retire for like 13 years now.
You
And
won't let him.
I've done it a few times, and I go back and I go, So this one was really a personal project. It's we're considering it our legacy project in terms of, and I've been all involved after I did retire from my development company and sold it in 14 years ago. I said, I probably got one more left in me, and I want to do something that matters. I want to do something that I'm not going to be the typical developer just trying to pave everything. I want to do something that's real, that makes sense, and that can hopefully help people in terms of the long-term effect. And that is, if it can help people become healthier, then, they're going to be happier and more joyful and, live life a little bit better. So we got lucky. We found a site that, we bought 80 acres and for this little community, 80 acres was a big site. And then we cut a deal with the community and with a nonprofit. So we preserved 50 of the acres
Can you
around
believe
us, which, again, for me, it was the best public-private partnership I'd ever been involved with. Usually developers are being chased out of town, whereas, now the neighborhoods are happy, the city is happy, everybody's happy because we were able to really preserve some property that was, and again, our site we have a 365-degree view of a beautiful mountain range,
the Wasatch Range?
and it's gorgeous. And to be able to, save some of that for everybody in the community was really big for us.
Yes, and hot springs, to those of us in the wellness community, we are in love with hot springs, and that's geothermal power. That's Mother Nature's warm embrace. And here, Steve, I don't know if you know, but Chuck's location has these historic hot pots. It's like tufa domes, right? And there's dirty, neglected little hot pots of, mineral water in there. Well, he's restoring all of that. And there's an underground lake under the wellness
Yeah.
center. And so they're making, like, based on the Roman baths in Istanbul, like an underground subterranean pool for wellness, mineral pool, right?
Yes, yeah, which will include obviously hot and cold, mineral waters, sensory systems, recovery areas, et cetera. So it's going to be, we think, a kind of a subterranean water circuit unlike anything we can find anywhere in the U.S. at least. And we spent 2 years traveling all over Europe to try to, because the other countries, especially European countries, really do water well. They
Yeah,
they
yes,
understand it. And
yes.
I for part of my career, I built indoor water parks in the U.S. And so I knew a little bit about water, but that was all kid based.
Chlorine.
It's for children, which is awesome. Kids love water. Well, adults love water as well, and it's also can be very, very healthy. And so my goal was to really try to find something that would help both, children and adults. And so it was a way for us to kind of give back and really do one last development that really made a difference, or at least we hope it makes a difference.
But one of the things I was impressed about is you chose Overland Architects. I think it's Overland Partners or something. Are they out of Texas? Is that it?
Out of San Antonio.
And we do strategic sessions, and we help Chuck with his. And the architects are so into wellness. They're new to it, but they're like, we want to learn everything. And they were so proud. Now, the element besides the architect that we forget is that Chuck's so smart. He does so much homework and he goes to all the events. How many global wellness summits have you been to? Two?
I just got into a couple years ago, so I've done 2, and I've done this conference, and I'm going to the next one. And yeah, I'm in it for good now.
He's been in the Hot Springs Association
Yep.
meeting, which is real down to earth, and he still went to that to learn. But he put his money where his mouth is, knowing he's a developer, he's not a wellness guru, and he made a deal with Deepak Chopra. So what's that all about?
Well, I, by chance, was introduced to Deepak and through his COO, Justin Nahama. And so met with Dr. Chopra in Dubai, actually, our first meeting. And, we kind of talked about what his goals were and what our goals were, and they certainly aligned. He just wanted to help, a mere billion people and become more healthy, joyful, and live better. And I said, that's our goal as well. And, our goal from the beginning was we love the fact that if somebody can, come to our resort and spend a week and, kind of have a transformative situation and really go back home. But we really want them to leave and help others as well. We don't want it to be just a 1-week deal. So
One and done.
So we're developing some apps right now with Chopra in terms of being able to really keep in constant contact with our clientele, 24/7, 365.
And they're not afraid. I mean, Punacha Machaya is this week's guest on the podcast, who is the CEO of the Chopra Foundation. And he is right on the table about suicide, depression. He said in this podcast, 35, suicides every, how many minutes, and depression, anxiety. So to have a wellness center, a well-being center that isn't afraid to take those problems head on. Normally it's been subtle, like the sound bath will calm you down, or soak in this hot tub, you'll feel a lot better. But let's get down to the nitty-gritty. They're not afraid of that. And also, they want to make their North American hub, you might say, at AMEYALLI, right?
Yeah, they want to form with us the AMEYALLI Center of Excellence for Wellness, where so we're going to dive right into it. We're going to promote it. We're going to be active. We're going to be aggressive with it. So what we want to do is really bring in those world wellness experts, bring them on site where they can research and collaborate and really be there and provide an area where they can do that. So we can study that. We can do it better. And so that's really the Chopra's group's interest in getting that all in one spot so
But
we can do that.
Steve, can you imagine having developers? And I mean, he's new to it, right? He's dedicated, he's in there, but everything they design has to be aligned with Chopra's 7 pillars, which you've heard: emotional regulation, mindfulness, sleep, nutrition, movement, relationships, and laughter. Isn't that nice?
Important piece.
To have that guideline. What are you offering there? What are you selling on the on the property?
Well, we have obviously our first phase is as a residential component. We thought it was really important to bring families and children into the mix. Too often we see spas in certain areas, no children allowed, etc. We really believe if we're going to do any good in terms of helping create healthier individuals, we got to teach them young. I mean, guys in our 60s, it's a little late. Well, it's not late, but it's, would have been a lot better if it was 30 years ago,
right?
right? So we're really hoping the children. So we're doing some residents there, a 4-bedroom bath, nice sized residence, so we can have the whole family out there, soak in the hot tubs, really enjoy the water. Not to mention we're, less than 10 minutes away from the #1 ski resort in North America, which is helpful. So we really have it all there, and that's our first phase. And then we'll do an 80-room hotel, boutique hotel. We'll do some cottages. Those are 2-bedroom lock-offs. And then our crown jewel is really that 50,000 square foot well-being center.
Yeah. And what else they're going to do is, wonderful Veronica Schreiber-Smith,
Yes.
their icon of architecture. Well, this all comes full circle. I feel like I'm, it's my family. Worked with Veronica, and she took me to a Deepak Chopra event in LA. It was multi-sensory. That's like Ari tomorrow's gonna, but it was the Van Gogh room, where all the paintings are on the ceiling and the floor. But this was all Chopra, and his voice going, and images and meditation. But you could visit the House of Enlightenment that Veronica designed for him. And this was the first one with like an intentional kitchen where you're growing your herbs and, made to keep things fresh and healthy. A meditation space. There's intention behind every design. So we just thought how fun to make that. Chuck is developing that on his site.
We're going to build that home, yeah.
Because they had it in the metaverse, is what I forgot to say. At that event, you could visit it with your goggles on. Well, now that this is the first place it's going to be, Veronica's design. And, it might be a great place to tour newbies and say, would you like to add these things, to your space, right? Wouldn't that be great? But, history, hot springs, the guru of gurus when it comes to well-being and meditation, right? That's kind of a powerful thing. But, Chuck, what do you hope to get out of the symposium tomorrow? Why did you come to that?
Oh, I go to all these things to learn. I mean, without a question. It doesn't matter who I met with. I mean, we met one of the conferences, learned a lot from you. And to me, that's what it's about. Again, especially since I'm fairly new to this. I need to learn as much as I can. And what's nice and what I found really nice about global wellness is that unlike other industries I've been in, people are willing to share. And I'm a believer in that. I mean, to me, the more you share, whether it's with a direct competitor or not, it doesn't matter. It makes us all better off.
It does.
We all can create better product if we share that.
I mean, the room will be competitors tomorrow. There's a lot of competition going on, but that's how you learn.
We think that's great. I mean, again, then we can all learn.
Yeah. What has been your biggest challenge so far in this learning curve of like, okay, I'm going to do a wellness thing?
Probably we had issues with with water. We have a ton of water below our site. It's all artesian, 104-degree thermal, very healthy water. But in Utah, you have to buy water rights.
Wow.
And so when I bought the property, it came with rights, but all those rights had lapsed. So then I had to reapply to the state, and I'm still doing it 4 years later. So that's been kind of a challenge. Other than that, there really hasn't been. The development really has done something that I've never seen. Every time I could kind of run into a wall, something would happen. from the entitlement with the mayor to Deepak to, I mean, I can list 10 different items, I think, in terms of it. So to me, it was just, this development is meant to happen. It really is meant to happen.
Well, that's a good motivation. Steve, what would be your 3 biggest challenges? It's been 20 years of creating something new, pioneering a space. What mountains have you climbed?
Funding, regulation, the 2 big ones.
How do you go about getting funding? What are the kind of, people that get the idea? What radar do you use to find them?
I still haven't.
Yep.
I was, when we did the zoning, we had a lot of editorials, a lot of praise on
You
what
sure
we've done.
did.
And then it was my responsibility to break ground on my own property to show it could happen. And I knew that there would be a lot of investors, a lot of people that would be interested. And they share with me now how much they laughed. Now, thank goodness, I believed in Midtown Atlanta in the 70s. And when Midtown was parking lots and bars and nobody went there. And I bought a lot of land there, and then we rechanged that zoning. And last year it was the most active square mile in America.
What?
But I was able to take my holdings there and sell and leverage, and that's how I've basically built out Serenbe.
Wow.
And luckily, those first 20, 40 homeowners were people that had a certain amount of wealth and they didn't need mortgages. So they were either cash or very, low mortgages. And now we've created our own comparables, but we still aren't there with mixed use. So if you look at a lot of the commercial, a lot of things we've had, that's why we've been slow in getting some of the bigger projects, corporate headquarters, offices, that kind of thing.
To get the regulation for that?
Well, I have all the regulations I need now, and so now the big thing's funding. And through the global summit in I think it was when we were in Switzerland, I had great discussions with the folks from Mayo.
Wow, the Mayo Clinic?
And so we were doing this whole idea of, gosh, can I talk about that? Maybe not. We were doing this great project to roll out, and it was going to be a whole name and what have you. And I need to build a building. And I thought this was great tenant, what have you. And couldn't get the funding to do that. I had to sell a half acre on Peachtree Street to build the building. Everybody thought, how can it happen? Well, the Mayo deal didn't happen. But I have a 23,000 square foot building filled with medical and health professionals. What's more, that now we have what we call live works. That's 20 live works on the street with it. That's individuals buying fee simple, and there's 3 streams of income. On the street level is storefront facing and 2 residents. So we have some 20 practitioners, and this is anywhere from Chinese doctors to Pilates to yoga to traditional medical doctors who have now broken away from, left the traditional medical
So functional
and
medicine.
insurance. Yeah. So our pediatricians, our doctors, everyone is right there, and they've all come to us because we've set the intent of a wellness area. Out in the wilderness, this wasn't it.
So who are they serving? What's the population base that they'll be serving?
Well, we are in Metro Atlanta, so people
Okay.
are coming in. I mean, we are our housetops certainly don't serve that. And everyone thinks, how will my business, how can I ever make this happen? But somehow I'm motivated. There's nothing that makes logical. There are no feasibility studies. One of the greatest physical therapists, I mean, sports teams, 5 people in to see her. And she was out for a birthday party for her 7-year-old. And we were just building this building. She was standing outside and looking. And my daughter, Garni, who maybe you've met, she ran to her and she knew who she was. You want to rent a space? She said, I was standing here fantasizing for a minute. Wouldn't it be fun to practice out here? Garni says, we could make you a deal to where you could come down 1 day a week. Oh, she says, gosh, wouldn't that be fun? So she just like, okay, I'm going to do it. Well, that was 5 years ago. 5 years ago. She now has moved there. She now has 3 people in that office. And if you want to see her, it's the only place you can see her. She still runs her big office in Atlanta, but if you actually want to see her, you come there. And so she She said, "Where's everybody coming from? I don't know." I still haven't marketed. I still haven't told people I have an office here.
So it's a wellness destination. That's what you
It's a
know.
wellness destination.
Yeah, they
And,
see.
and now that's affecting the entire area. So there's a lot of things. So if you know Life Preserve out of India, they now have 1,200 acres down the road from us. And so this is really,
Snowballing.
there's a lot of things happening. So this whole area, because of our zoning that requires 70%. So, and now we're becoming
70% what?
70% safe for agriculture. So now we're becoming the think tank for agriculture. Have you seen Common Ground?
Oh, yes.
So it's about our soil health, which
Ah.
turns into our health.
It was a big global wellness trend 2 years ago.
And so we're kind of the think tank area. So where Dale has put their Southeast Regional Center there, the National Farmland Trust has 4 people operating out of there. If you look at the testimony that was in the movie, that was organized out of Serenbe.
So awesome.
And so this, just by setting intent,
You
without
attract like people.
anything that made any common sense. And this is why people show up and they just feel it and they change their lives and move there.
Well, let's be real. How many people did you say? I was telling you, Steve, that one of our colleagues at Global Wellness Summit, she was a spa, I don't know, consultant or something. And one year, she came to me, she goes, "I'm going to do it, Kim. I'm doing it. I'm moving to Serenbe." I was like, "I thought you just went to visit." And that's what how many people from G2S
13.
have come and moved to
That's
Serenbe?
awesome.
So there's some energy.
So if you're walking, if you're talking it, and then you show up and actually see it, you recognize it.
So seeing is believing. Now, Chuck, how are you adapting your business at AMEYALLI with today's current economic climate? How are you doing that?
Well, we're really not looking at the climate today because that obviously changes. And being in real estate for 40 years, the ups and downs come and go, obviously. I think the key is the trend, and what we're really trying to look at what people really want and need and provide that to them. And I think, like Steve was saying, sometimes you just got to buck the trends. Sometimes you can't follow, the Wall Street real estate program of Main and Main. Sometimes it just doesn't operate that way. So you really, I think, have to believe in it, and then you just got to make it happen. You got to do it, and you got to bring something there. I've had people say, "Are you nuts? What are you doing?" I mean, and I would say, yeah, probably, but that's okay. I mean, I've survived so far, and it's been okay. So, I mean, why not do it? But I really, I think with the research we've done and the people we've talked to, we know there's the need there. We know that there's the desire. So we just have to bring it to them.
And also, what would you tell a developer who says, "Well, it's a good idea. I can see the reality of this," but when push comes to shove, they value engineer stuff out because it's cheaper, short-term thinking? I'll ask both you gentlemen that. What would you tell someone that is like tempted to value engineer?
Don't cut it short. I mean, to me, that's the worst thing to do is to cut it short. Stick with your convictions and your commitments and do it. It will work out. I mean, but I think it's hard for people. And again, people in the real estate field, it's, if it doesn't hit, one segment or another, that's, the Class A type segment, they shy away from it. So you really got to be a pioneer like Steve, and really, really live with your convictions, come hell or high water and do it. And it will work. It's working. To me, you just said, it wasn't common sense. Actually, I think it was common sense that no one figured out.
Yeah, you're right.
And you have that organic growth, which really, to me, is the best growth. It's organically proving
That's right.
that model every single day. And I think that's critical.
Now, what would you tell someone that wanted to fudge it?
Well, traditionally, when people start value engineering, it's by line item in a budget. And they forget to look at the bottom line. And you have to look at all the out of silos. You can't look at that. And so you have to mix it up. We see that time and time again with, this is, 20% ahead. We can't, over what we normally do. We can't do that. Well,
Exactly.
look at the whole thing. I mean, I have instance after instance. For instance, it made no sense to put in a farm, but I knew we had to put a farm. And so you're trying to value, I was trying to actually figure out, okay, how do we balance out and make sure we are going to make money? Well, I knew we didn't need to spend any money on marketing because nobody would believe it anyhow. So we just had to do it.
But I
So
do
I
beg to
took-
differ with you.
I took that marketing money that's in most budgets, and I put the farm in. One of the wisest things I did. When we said we're not, we're not going to grade, we're going to really spend the time in planning so that we do not bring in mass grading. We're going to bury the lines so that so that we don't have to do all these things. And yeah, that costs more to do that. But I saved entire mature trees. And so my
Favorite thing.
landscape budget is a fraction of what it is for most developers, and it looks more natural and real. And so you can't value engineer by traditional line item accounting. You have to look at what you're trying to do and what the bottom line really is going to be.
Well, the other thing is, sure, you didn't maybe do mailers and advertise and da-da-da, but your PR has always been solid.
We've always had a lot of earned income.
Yep.
Because or earned press because of what we've done.
Yeah.
But it's exactly with an individual. People can understand. I had trouble initially. I put geothermal in because my dense areas, I didn't want the noise, and we tried initially to really get people to do that. But my spec builders, the banks wouldn't loan them the money, so I couldn't push them to it. And then I found that our buyers that were doing their own homes, when it got to their value engineering of marble countertops or geothermal, the marble countertops always won.
Oh my God.
And Bosch brought their experience center there. It's like, okay, we're going to educate everybody. And so we had a model house we built with Bosch. So it's all certified. It's all geothermal. And by the time you do that, you've reduced your energy demand by 60% plus. So your solar costs 40% of what it normally would.
Sure.
And so we had that. We put it on the market. And I said, well, yeah, but we can't afford that. Everybody can't afford this. Well, yeah, there was a premium to it. It was like 18% cost more to build that house.
In the short term.
It costs, more to build it. So a lot of times, like Bosch would say, yeah, but your payback is 7 years in your savings. Baloney. We sold that house. Their mortgage, the increase in their mortgage was less than what their power bill would have been. It was cash positive month one. But yet people tend to look at that payback, the energy you're saving. So this is what I'm saying. People they're value engineering by old conversations rather than look at what your cash flow. And this isn't even starting to value health.
Wow.
If we could attach a health value to a lot of these concepts, it would change a lot. Once we change our whole economy to actual cost, it's going to change a lot of things.
Sure.
I mean, Chuck, remember at the Hot Springs meeting how they talked about geothermal? And I'm
Yep.
like, wait, it's not just in New Zealand and, Colorado. It's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
It can be.
But it takes more money up front.
It does, absolutely. But again, I think, as Steve was saying, it's a value proposition. You really got to look at the whole program and not just the short-term run of it. But again, I think it comes down to education. Most people don't understand it, including the bankers.
It's not just energy. What we're not measuring is what that noise of that constant buzz is doing to our energy system. We want to know why we're depressed. It's all these things that we're just shutting out mentally, but our physical body, our energy fields are not.
Right. And you live in a place like LA with cement everywhere, driving. I mean, I'm so happy to live near the woods because you heal again. And I know, are you doing long-term studies on the health of your people?
We need to.
Yeah, you do. That's your next phase.
We had some people come through and they want to follow at least 30 kids because they said the kids are different. And now one of our doctors wants to study people moving there because we're getting ready to launch an aging in place campus. And they want to study them as to where they are when they enter and then where they're going to be compared to similar people who have gone to traditional housing.
And I just thought of this. A friend of ours, there's a couple in the family who live in a community, a very close-knit community, and the wife has Alzheimer's. She is vibrant compared to other Alzheimer's because she's beloved by the community, taken care of, taken places, one-on-one. So that's very important. Chuck, let me ask you what you've enjoyed the most. I mean, Steve, you'd be proud of Chuck. He really puts his money where his mouth is. I mean, you don't just go to Deer Valley and bring in Deepak Chopra and find the only hot spring. What have you really enjoyed about this journey so far?
The creative part. I mean, learning about the health and wellness for one. I mean, I've always been a little bit proactive in terms of my own health, and I like that. And my wife is real involved, but uh, it's just been learning that part of it, and then being able to create something that I think that people are really going to enjoy. That's really going to make them healthier, and so there's really a benefit there. That in real estate we've been building stuff, all kinds of stuff, and usually it's just what everybody wants for today, and they don't really consider the true effects of it. And this is a development where you're going to really be able to see the true effects. You're seeing in yours. I mean, I think everybody who does this, you're going to see those effects, and it would be really nice to study that. I've been in senior housing for 40 years, and
Yeah.
so I've met with thousands of seniors, and how do you help them become healthier too in terms of their own buildings? Well, you said the first thing is, how about community? The difference between a senior aging in place at their home versus aging in a community is vastly different. And I'm sure it's been studied, but it's obvious. I mean, you don't have to study it. You can see it in the people's faces that being a part of that community is super helpful. And with the kids, I mean, it doesn't. I mean, it's not rocket science to figure out nature's pretty good. you know, Kids they need to be in nature. They need to be in. When we grow up, we never were inside,
Yeah.
ever,
No, right. Nobody was checking on us for hours.
ever.
And these screens everyone worried about are not in any competition for nature if they have a choice.
If they have a choice.
Right.
Um, well, you know what? I just love bringing you two together, and I just really applaud people learning from each other. I'm so lucky because I get to meet all the thought leaders. But really, Steve, we interviewed Deborah Zake, we told you, the
Oh my gosh.
godmother of the
She
mind body
is.
fitness movement. She's 102 this year. And then Susie is, of course, much younger, but Deborah was her mentor. She's the godmother of the wellness economy. And now here you are, the godfather of wellness real estate. And here's Chuck. Just think, young buck Chuck. He is now taking his legacy project and saying, let's go toward wellness. What closing advice do you have for Chuck on his journey?
Inspire other people in their retirement to make a difference. The baby boom generation is the only generation that's lived the extremes. We were going to solve the world with, drugs, sex, and rock and roll. And then we became the greed generation of the 90s. And hopefully now in our retirement, we can come back to center and do things like you're doing and really make a difference.
And that would be very helpful for sure. That's good words to follow for sure.
And another thing I forgot to be happy about here with Chuck is that embracing the location. You've certainly done it with Serenbe. It is of a place. And I guess the Heber Valley was a Swiss settlement, a lot of Swiss immigrants. So the houses they're building are Swiss chalets, and they use the tufa rock from the, hot springs and that it gurgles out, and wood from the area. But also there's family units because it's, Mormon area, lots of kids. You can't forget that. And what was the last thing about it? I just feel like everyone's so proud of the cinematic views. So you know this, that no matter where you are, how fancy the building is, how much crystal chandelier, people look out the window.
Well, and in our site, we've really tried to treat it, with that sacred reciprocity that we really, really enjoy and see in the land. And so our whole design from day one was to be, okay, one with the land. We don't want some big 6-story, 8-story, high-rise, glitzy hotel there. We want a hotel that just literally comes out of the ground. So we put restrictions on no more than 35 feet in height, kept everything low scale, using all the materials, nothing leaves our site. We use everything. So kind of that, as I would call, kind of an organic development, to really use it versus, again, in the development world, we're all trying to pave everything.
Ugh.
That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to really, be authentic with the property, with the land, because it's really sacred. It's got a great history to it, and we want to keep that.
And I read somewhere, Steve, I don't know if it's true, that the second most prevalent element on the planet is cement. I hope that's not true.
Jeez.
But I just want to tell you, because parking lots, so rooftops, sidewalk, it's scary, right? Roads. But what I want to say to you is that we are all inspired by your work. Please don't ever listen to the naysayers. Just keep on kicking, and I have a hunch you will. So thank
And
you
we're
for
absolutely, we're on fire. And people are joining us and they're catching the fire and carrying it.
Okay, and now you two are going to be best friends and be building together. So remember, it started here first.
That's right.
That's right.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Deepak, it's such a pleasure to talk to you today. I've been following you around for a long time.
Thank you.
I must be a groupie. 1991, you
Mm.
spoke at the International Spa Association in Turnberry, Isle. Do you remember that?
Yeah, a long time ago.
And you talked about the cell memory
Mhm.
and life being a river. And it just never left my head. And then what's another thing that you did? 2014, I was in the audience when you were the keynoter at the Global Wellness Summit
Yeah,
in
I
Mexico
remember
City.
that too.
And we're sitting here at AMEYALLI, one of the most exciting new wellness real estate communities in the country and the world. Do you know what the theme of 2014 was? Building a well world.
Correct, I remember.
Who knew that 9 years later?
Yeah, here we are. Yeah.
Now, I also heard you speak at JP Morgan Chase in New
Mhm,
York,
mhm.
and you helped them with the rebuilding of their
I
headquarters.
did, yeah.
What sort of things did you do there?
Well, just advising them on well-being spaces, things like purity of water, lighting, circadian rhythms, nourishing the five senses, and they're doing it now.
I will tell you, I never heard of a money center, a banking center, having yoga and cycling rooms, physical therapy and medical spaces, mother's rooms, and a prayer and meditation room. And you do remember when we did the Wellness Real Estate Summit there, you didn't get tired because they clean the air.
Yes.
And so you're fresh all day.
Well, it's now well documented that most indoor environments in cities have more pollution than the outdoors because of all the appliances that we use and all the electromagnetic pollution that occurs inside the house.
Inside. And Joseph Allen from Harvard's Healthy
Yes,
Building
yes.
worked with you.
Yeah,
What a gentleman. And they found out that no one caught COVID outside. Outside is always healthy, right?
yeah.
So let's focus in a minute. The Global Wellness Summit has identified the wellness real estate sector as the fastest growing of all 11 sectors in the $5.6 trillion global wellness economy. And here we are. What got you interested in getting involved in a wellness community?
Well, first of all, I think the founders are visionaries, and this is not just another business for them. They have lots of businesses, but this for them is a vision for the rest of the world. I think if we do it right here, this could be a very emergent experience for global communities, global real estate. So it's more like a lab where we can introduce innovative things like vagal stimulation, parasympathetic nervous system activation, understanding the relationship of the skin microbiome, gut microbiome, brain health, epigenetics, neuroplasticity. Less than 5% of illness is due to what are called fully penetrant genes. Now revolutions occurring. I think in the last decade, you have artificial intelligence, you have gene editing, you have messenger RNA, you have the consciousness revolution, and you have neuroplasticity. I think I mentioned.
You did mention, but you also have your fingers. What's on your fingers right now?
I have sensors. So this is one sensor, Apple Watch. This is another sensor. It's called a No Watch. This is an Aura Ring, and this is something called Ultra Human. So everything is being measured from sleep to stress, which I don't have any, but exercise, sleep, heart rate variability. Reason I'm wearing 4 is I'm comparing if they match each other. And if they do, that means that particular parameter is reliable. But if they don't, that means we need more work. In addition to that, I've created my own AI. It's called digitaldeepak.ai.
Digital Deepak.
Yeah, you can go right now on the browser, type it, and ask any question. Try it right now.
Oh, you really want me to do that? All right.
Yeah.
Well, while we're doing that, I wanted to ask you why Utah? Why does Utah?
This is the most gorgeous environment. Look at that. Those mountains, the sky, the earth meets the sky wherever you look. And it's pure. The environment is fabulous. And you don't even think that's the environment. It's your extended body. And it is pure. So it's the perfect lab for actually looking at epigenetic modulation through both the internal environment, which is your mind, and the external environment, which includes your body and this. So it's, as I said, a perfect lab for looking at not only human longevity, but health span.
Well, I want to know, in so many, I am putting my email in here, don't you dare worry. But in so many spas, people are bored, now. It's just the rub down, it's the soak, it's the hot cold. I was so encouraged to talk to your team and talk about the courageous things you're going to try to address in your Center for Wellbeing. Will it just be sore neck muscles?
No. Be everything from sleep to stress management to mental well-being to emotional resiliency to understanding your body as a field of awareness, to change your perception of the meaning of aging, to actually how you metabolize the experience of time. It's something that's never been done before.
And as I mentioned to you, I was lucky enough to interview your CEO of the Chopra Foundation,
Correct. Yeah.
Makaya, and he was so honest about caring about the real issues that face people. We're talking grief, we're talking, addiction, depression, and
these are the modern epidemics, pandemics, not COVID.
right.
This is the grief and the depression and the loneliness and the anxiety. Those are the real pandemics that lead to addictive behavior and chronic disease as well. And of course, disrupt everything from sleep to your biological rhythms.
Well, to be able to tell someone, I'm going to go to a Center for Wellbeing, a lab, and I'm going to address these things. We're not going to hide them under the rug, but we're going to really talk directly about what's bothering me and give me tools to.
Yeah, that's why technology works. You'll have a personal coach 24/7, and it'll be me.
It'll be you. I also attended the event you had in Los Angeles with Veronica Schreiber-Smith.
Yeah,
the gorgeous.
she was supposed to be here, but because of the flights, she couldn't get in.
Right. Well, we went inside the metaverse house that she made for you, the House of Enlightenment.
Yes.
I took a trip there, but you did a 3-dimensional sort of like the Van Gogh thing where you were talking and
Yes.
leading people, and I think that was a taste of
That
what
was
you
a
plan
taste.
to do.
The next frontier is immersive experiences, where you're immersed in an environment where actually real healing occurs. So here's, I believe that what we call everyday reality is a projection of consciousness, and what we call VR and augmented reality and extended reality is an extension of the virtual reality we're already in. So if you put a person with burns in a VR environment, VR, not where you show them snow-clad mountains, the burns start to heal. Opposite, you have somebody who's frostbite, you put them in a VR environment that suggests warmth, the frostbite starts. So there are applications. The next frontier is going to be called metaceuticals in the metaverse, where you'll be able to treat depression, autism, chronic illness, inflammation, all through VR experiences. You know that a lot of people are now suggesting psychedelics, and they do work in PTSD and many chronic
cases.
illnesses. But actually, where we are going with the VR experience, augmented reality, it will replicate psychedelic experience without taking a psychedelic.
Oh my goodness. You know, it reminds me of what you asked Sanjay Gupta on your gorgeous podcast,
Yeah.
Infinite Potential.
Yeah.
When you were like, Sanjay, I was in an ER room when I was just starting out as a doctor.
Yeah.
And you mistakenly picked up the wrong chart and
That's
you told
right.
someone they had cancer.
That's right.
Tell us what happened there.
Well, I told the patient he had cancer, and I could see immediately his demeanor changed, his body language. Of course, blood pressure went up, inflammation increased. Then I realized it wasn't his chart, and I apologized, and immediately his biology changed. So information and the interpretation of information changes your biology.
Changes your biology. And that brings me to the last question. Your 7 pillars of, let's see.
Well, now we have 10.
Oh, no, you have 10. We'll fill in the blanks, but emotional regulation, sleep, mindfulness, movement, nutrition, relationship, my favorite, laughter.
Yeah.
Why did you put it in there?
Well, because humor causes the secretion of immunomodulators. The tears of laughter are different chemically than the tears of sorrow. So if you look at the immune cells, so laughter is healing.
You even interviewed comedians, and you said in India they have laughter clubs.
They do.
Come on. So we know we're sitting here because Chuck Heath, the developer, flew over and saw this spa sign, and there's hot springs that were gone to seed, and he wants to breathe new life into this Mother Nature's warm embrace. He calls it a legacy project, but I think for you, Deepak, it also is. Is that true?
Yeah, it's a great project for me to take all that I know in theory and make it practical, yes.
Well, we're delighted to have you here.
Thank
we can't
you.
wait till the crowd hears you inspire them. And just like me, then they can remember you through the years.
Okay, thank
So
you.
thank you.
Thank you.